Gridiron 360. I'm Dave.
I'm lost.
I'm Bill. That's Dave. What's up?
What's happening?
Dave's got a little Florida State shirt on. I got a little Clemson shirt on. We are talking about our team's conference, the Atlantic Coast Conference. We're going to get into, over the next few casts, a conference by conference in the NCAA, the Power 5 conferences, that is.
Maybe throw in a little group of 5 / independents at
Maybe
the
we'll
end.
do an
Maybe. We'll
extra
see.
one.
We'll
Yeah,
see. There might be
so-
a few to talk about.
So we want to go through each conference and talk about the 2020 NFL draft prospects in each conference. Going to kind of go through, based on several different sites we looked at, roughly what they're projecting as the top 10 prospects out of each conference. And then we'll dive into a few other names of note as we go. But again, we're going to do a cast for each of the Power 5 conferences. Who would those be, David?
All right. Well, obviously, we mentioned the Atlantic Coast Conference, the old ACC. Maybe then we'll stay down south and talk a little bit of SEC. We know there's a lot of love for that in this area, but you are second fiddle to the ACC.
That's right, Southeastern Conference.
Then we got the Big Ten up in the Midwest.
Okay.
Then we're going to head to the, I don't even know what you call it. It's really not geographically sound at all, but the Big 12.
Yes.
And
yes.
then we can head out west and talk about the Pac-12.
All right.
And mind you, none of those numbers are even accurate anymore.
No, not anymore. So like I said, we're going to start today with our home teams in the ACC. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Like I said, we've kind of looked at a few different sites, a site called Draft Tech, DRAFTEK, Pro Football Network. A lot of them are, in terms of top 10 by conference, are fairly similar. So what I'm going to do first is read down who we have as the top 10 and a couple others that were from different sites. Sound good?
Yeah. Yep. So just be aware, again, we're mentioning a site, but, obviously there is no common knowledge, so to speak, in this. Certainly there are some guys that I think across, several websites will be in that list, but just understand that's why we're going to go over more guys than that, because this is going to be fluid and it's going to change. And especially if this draft holds out, which Goodell's getting a lot of grief, but sticking to his guns saying we're going to go at it on time, it's going to make some really interesting player reviews. There's going to be a lot more effort have to be put on tape as opposed to, as we've mentioned, pro days are pretty much dead. I don't know that anybody even got a pro day, and I don't think before the coronavirus. So, just be aware of that, and we'll keep it open. And certainly if you have ideas of guys you think, belong in the conversation, this is what that comment section before. We'll mention you, and we'll come back to it.
That's right. All right, so the ACC, the top 10 prospects that we're seeing, as well as, like I said, two others that were in another site. So it's really kind of top 12. Number one overall, by all counts, is my man Isaiah Simmons, linebacker, safety, defense, all-purpose guy from my Clemson Tigers.
Word is he's been working on his punting.
All right, sounds good. We've also got at number 2, which is pretty much a consensus. The top 4 were all pretty accurate on all the sites. Number 2, Mekhi Becton, offensive tackle, Louisville. Heard a lot about him recently, especially because the combines went and he impressed there. Number 3, wide receiver T. Higgins, again, my Clemson Tigers. Number 5, big body guy, loves to go up and get the ball. Number 4, cornerback A.J. Terrell, my Clemson Tigers. Number 5, well, we see John Simpson, a guard from my Clemson Tigers. I also saw out there Jason Sturbridge, defensive tackle from North Carolina. So we'll kind of put them as 5A, 5B. Number 6, Bryce Hall, cornerback from Virginia. If you remember, this guy was a stud most of his career. He, this past season, got hurt early on and really didn't play at all this year. But if you look at his tape, from what he's done throughout his years at Virginia, this is an impressive dude. Number 5, 6, 7. I've got D-end, Alton Robinson from Syracuse. Number 8, your man, Cam Akers, that is. Running back, Florida State University. Number 9, we'll say 9A and 9B. 9A, running back, A.J. Dillon, Boston College. 9B on another side, I saw safety, Tanner Muse, again from my Clemson Tigers. And number 10, defensive tackle, Laurel Murchison, NC State. So we are going to, what we want to do is talk about these guys, and then there are a few other names out there that we want to make note because we do know this conference very well, guys that we think could have a potential impact at the next level.
All right, well, let me ask you a question and get your thoughts. Okay, we obviously did.
I like it.
We did a top 10, top 12 in the ACC. Mm-hmm. Of these guys, I think one is a no-brainer, but let's talk about him because he's certainly worth talking about.
Sure.
But top 10 draft picks outside of Isaiah Simmons, who I think you and I both would agree is likely not only a top 10, but probably even a top 5, depending upon unless something happens with the quarterbacks that gets crazy. Do you see anybody else in here that you think is a top 10 pick in the draft?
Mekhi Becton, possibly.
Okay.
We know how if you're a draft aficionado or just somebody that likes to watch it, you know what a run is. So if there's a run early for some reason on offensive linemen, Becton's been mixed up there with your Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, your what's his name from Alabama.
Shedrick?
Jedrick Willis.
Jedrick.
And I've even seen my Giants taking Andrew Thomas from Georgia at 4, which would be, in my mind, not a great idea. So those guys, if there's a run, Becton is probably mixed right in there with Jedrick Willis from Alabama and Tristan Wirfs. He could go anywhere in there. I love T. I think he's great, but I don't know that he's top 10 because I think, right now a lot of people are looking at Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb as maybe the 1-2 receivers, 1A, 1B, however you want to look at it. But based on his combine performance, Henry Ruggs has now stepped into the mix with the way the NFL runs their offenses nowadays, and you see teams shoot the Super Bowl champs. Kansas City Chiefs got the little speedster in Tyreek Hill and what he does. A guy like Ruggs, who has similarity, a similar comp, might be desirable. It just depends. And T could, because of all those guys, T is the tallest of those 4 guys. He's the tallest, and if you're going to talk about a guy that's, let's the 50-50 ball, throw it up, basketball type body, that's him, of all of them. But top 10 picks, I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I mean, here's the thing is most people that I've seen, and I'm talking about the big sites, the Sports Illustrateds, CBS, ESPN.
NFL.
Yeah, NFL. Yeah, I'm seeing the prospects. You're looking at Willis as number 1, interchanging somewhat with Wirfs, and then Becton being number 3. What's interesting to me about Becton, and this is kind of where it would have been interesting in some of the combine results and some of the things that happen over time, is if you look at him from a measurables, Becton is the beast.
Yeah.
Everybody else is in that 6'3" to 6'5" range, somewhere between maybe about 310 to maybe about 320, 325. Becton's 6'7". I think he's 350? So this guy
364.
364. So he is by far like that big, huge body.
And he moved well at the combine, right? I mean, I think that's kind of what not that he wasn't, a name that would have been top 10 in the ACC anyways, but I think that really threw him into the potential top lineman pick, depending on him, Wirfs, or whoever, or, the other guys.
Now, but you've got, if you think about it, you've got pedigree, obviously, in the Alabama has been a pipeline on the offensive line. Now, I will say this about Alabama. They've had a lot of guys come into the NFL with high prospects and not really make it happen in the NFL. They've had a few guys that have just not lived up to their contracts.
I mean, they're usually pretty solid, but to have like like the Taylor Lewans,
Yes.
or like or the Quentin Nelsons
Yeah.
of the world, where you're drafting them high, you're expecting a lot of them, and they actually live up to expectations. I don't remember many of them completely flopping. But there are you're right. Yeah, I mean, I totally see
understand if you're talking about taking an offensive tackle, which my guess is there's going to be an offensive tackle taken in the top 10, if not 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Just depends on what there's a run on that position. But the idea is and you and I have talked about this. You can't miss in the top 10.
Yeah.
You can't miss. So unless you're going quarterback, other than that, if you're really not thinking best player available, you get into a dangerous area. I think about guy DJ Fluker, and then who was the left tackle? Oh my God, he was so out of shape. There were pictures of him where he was a disaster, and he played for, I think, the Bengals. Did the Bengals draft him? And I'm blanking on his name. I can totally picture him. But my point is, they've even had like interior players that have not, really lived up to the, because again, this is your problem when you play for Alabama. And this has been true on defense with some of their linebackers not, being big in the NFL, some of their safeties. You're never really sure what's the dominant part of this team because they all look dominating as a group. And so, therefore, who's really helping who in that scenario? Again, not taking anything away from Willis, just, so then you start looking at some of these places like where you got a guy like Becton. Now you got Wirfs comes out of Iowa. Big Ten. They put the big beasts in there. They just do. And those guys do generally, I won't say generally, I guess I don't, probably overgeneralizing, don't. I think that guy is a player. I think he's legit. I think he's a 10-year guy. Whether he's an elite, it remains to be seen. But he's a guy I think you certainly, your likelihood of missing on him is much lower. Becton's just one of those guys. Like, does that freakish size start to weigh, and you got to start thinking about it. You got to think about what divisions you play in and that kind of stuff, because when you get that big, some of the challenges are, can that guy handle like a Khalil Mack, who's not huge size-wise? He's built like a brick, but he's speed. Can he handle a Von Miller? He might be able to handle, your heavier, larger, maybe he can handle like a Chase Young body type that's just enormous. Better, it's just it really remains to be seen. But again, Becton looked very, I have to say this, like, I look back at some of the film, but film's tough. I'm not doing film study for hours and hours, but he is very light on his feet.
Yes.
Doesn't quite look
I've done some study,
the size on him.
I did that online course at the Scouting Academy, learning how to scout NFL prospects. And one thing I did get through most of the offense, I got through the offensive line, so I do use that when I look at these guys, and I agree. Light on his feet. We want to keep this snackable, ladies and gentlemen. My wife gave me this word. She's in the digital advertising realm. Snackable. Okay, so you can
like
listen.
Lunchables?
Yeah, I guess. So what we'll do is we realize we're running already into about 15 minutes. We're going to just go through these top 5. We'll put that out. We'll identify it, and then we'll go through the other 5, 6, 7. Put that out and identify it, and then we'll put another one out to talk about some other names in the conference. So let's continue.
Okay.
We just left Isaiah Simmons, Mekhi Becton. Now we come to T. Higgins, wide receiver, Clemson University. T, again, he's a big-bodied guy, 6'4", 216. He's a go-up-and-get-it guy. He runs great routes, for a tall guy with long arms, has very soft hands. Much like the body of what's my boy that from Clemson that played in Pittsburgh for a while and then gotten himself in trouble? Martavis Bryant. Martavis Bryant's size and type play, but a little better at going up and catching the ball when it's a 50-50 ball. Love T. He's definitely can step on the field his first year and have an impact. My man is Mike Williams. I've loved Mike forever. I remember Mike Williams before he came to Clemson. We were losing our receivers in DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, Martavis Bryant, Adam Humphries, and he put out a tweet as an incoming freshman, "Never fear, Mike Williams is here." And I love that. And he performed throughout his whole career. Slow start to the NFL. I hope T is a quicker start to the NFL, but I think you're starting to see his capabilities. Unfortunately, Phillip Rivers' arm, because he is a downfield receiver, wasn't there this year and has gotten worse, so it didn't really accentuate his best qualities. But I think for T, if you're a team that needs that boundary guy, tall guy, go up and get it. If you don't have one, I mean, nowadays in the NFL, it's a mix. You have to have every little chess piece, right? You have your tall receiver, you have your body receiver, much like A.J. Brown and Anquan Bolden, thick, tough body guy, can catch it in traffic. You have your little slot guy, you know. You have your tight end that, is now a part of the mix because most tight ends are, especially ones drafted higher, ones that can catch the dang ball. T's a good receiver, man. I'm excited to see what he can do.
I'm be honest with you, and I'm not saying this is right, but I could see him slipping a little bit in the draft, and just for this reason, I look at the two guys up top, and you look at a Jerry Jeudy, and you look at a, like a CeeDee Lamb. Lamb's a little bit larger, not an immense. He's certainly not any body type that big. But there's a lot about speed. And then you got a guy like Henry Ruggs out of Alabama who's, lightning in a bottle, that with the way offenses are spreading people out and kind of looking at different ways to stretch the field and push, move the field around, I think I could see him kind of being a little bit of a victim to that in the draft. Now again, this is the whole thing is people find superstars in the second and third and fourth round, so it's not a knock on him. I'm just kind of thinking of, where they're rating these players and what they're doing with them now. So, I wouldn't shock me, but I do believe he fits that mold. And if you need that mold, he fits it better than most that you've got out there. Now, I know there may be some guys, particularly looking at like LSU size guys and out there, but, I've watched this guy play quite a bit. I've watched this guy dominate quite a bit. Didn't have, and nor did any of the receivers, the best last game of the year, the receiving core from club. But the whole thing is, if that's where people are going to base their opinions on, because you can watch that guy, he's been lighting it up for a couple years now. So
for this year, there are several games this year. I think he set a Clemson record. I think it was 4 or 5 straight games with multiple touchdowns and a half. I mean, he was catching at least 2. There's one game I know he had 3. Now, he did disappear in the entire postseason this year against Ohio State and Alabama.
That's true.
But so did Justin Ross. Yeah. Trevor was having trouble. That said, his entire career, ever since he was a freshman, and on top of that, filling in shoes after shoes after shoes in wide receiver U here, and living up to the hype, if not taking that bar to another level.
Yep.
In a different way.
Yep.
Because he wasn't Sammy Watkins. And as great as Nuke was when he played for us, it was a different receiver.
Yep.
And he has performed against great competition in big games. Though the last couple he didn't, but he has his, every year prior, he was in postseason play and playing at a very high level, impactful. So I think he's a gem. It's going to matter where he goes. It's going to matter where he goes for him to be successful. It's got to be a team that needs that piece. And, a quarterback, quite frankly, he can work with a quarterback that might have the arm but is less accurate, okay? Because his wingspan and how big he is, his again, one of the things he's great at is going up and getting the ball. He runs great routes. Yep. He'll catch them in stride, but if it comes down to it, the back shoulder, those throws, just to throw it up there and let him try to win the battle, perfect for that.
Yeah, and you can't. Well, one of the things too you have to look at is, Clemson has put some pretty high-end receivers into the NFL. Not all of them have maybe played up to their draft status, but some of them have played above their draft status. But in general, you're not crying if your team's got, certainly we already talked about Nuke, who's one of the best in the game, top 3 easily. Yep. So Then you got guys like Sammy Watkins out there that can play. They've got some of the, and you kind of going in a different direction, but talk about some of the underneath guys. They've had a couple of they've had two guys.
Adam Humphries made a long career.
Yeah. And
he hasn't he's only with his second team now, right? Second team. I mean, it's not a guy that he was on a team. He's all right. He's cuttable.
Well, Tampa was terrible. No, these are guys that they're specific in their roles. You got
And
Hunter
now you see what
Renfrow.
Hunter's doing. Mike Williams.
You got
is
Mike
out
Williams
there.
out there. Yeah,
Okay.
You've got a pedigree of bringing guys into the league.
You look at even a guy like Jerron Brown, who's like third, fourth string for years with Seattle. I mean, I'm sure you go to Russell Wilson. You've seen him come in the clutch for him. He's not a major role player, but these are solid guys. So, you said pedigree about the lineman from Alabama, and that's, we've had a great pedigree in the last decade of you're not going to lose, and if it's a highly ranked guy, usually you're going to be pretty good with him.
Yeah, and I mean, mind you, like this is what I was kind of talking about with size. You're talking about a guy that's 6'4", 216 at last measurement. But again, and he's generally listed behind Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, and CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's the closest at 6'2", 198, which is not terrible. But Jerry Jeudy, 6'1", 193. Henry Ruggs, 5'11", 188. So he definitely fits a different profile. And I think I'm not saying if he goes to the right team and the right team has that pick and that need, then it makes sense. It just wouldn't shock me, given the emphasis on the speed in this class, if that doesn't get more of a look. But you got to watch that because that's great opportunity. Because outside of that, until you get to somebody like Denzel Mims, you don't really see that size, out there. And then you're probably getting into some, 4th, 5th, 6th round guys. So he definitely has that.
Yep. All right, let's move on. We spent a lot on T, but he's a great player. At number 4, A.J. Terrell, cornerback from Clemson. AJ's 6'1", $195. He played in tandem most of his career at Clemson, came in with Mr. Isaiah Simmons. They're good buddies. Isaiah being at the safety until this past year where he was everywhere. AJ got beat up a little bit in the championship game. He was pretty much tasked most of the game to Jamar Chase, who had a great game for LSU.
Yep.
But if you look, his play wasn't bad. The first touchdown I think Chase scored on him was a really deep ball down the right sideline. And he turned, in college, you don't necessarily need to turn your head, if you're not interfering. Well, he turned his head, still, which is what you have to do in the NFL. But in doing so, he lost contact a bit with the receiver, like just having the hand on him. And it gave just like a yard to 2 yards of space between them. That he had to come back and make up, and by that time Chase was gone and made a great play on the ball. And all night Chase was making great plays. But I'll say this kid was like a 4 or 5 star out of high school. Another kid who performed. This is a league. He's 6'1", okay? So when Richard Sherman came in, the tall cornerback, you started to see the league start looking for more and more of the tall cornerback that still had the speed and play of the shorter cornerback.
Yep.
This is that guy.
Yep.
This is that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I look at him and I say he's a solid number 2 on most NFL teams. He's not a shutdown guy. I got to be honest with you, from a shutdown perspective, and I kind of want to jump maybe a little bit outside the top 5 in saying this, but, Okudah's getting the props as number 1, and really generally you're seeing C.J. Henderson and Christian Fulton are names that are, repetitively being said
not
as
ACC guys.
Top 3, 4, right. The guy to me that has the potential to be a shutdown corner is going to be Bryce Hall.
Yep, I agree.
And I mean, his problem's going to be, and this is the danger of what's going on this year, is he's coming back off an injury, and so the fear is, you're talking about between being shut down and being okay is minimal in the NFL. I mean, you look at Revis in his great years.
Hall's 6'1" as well. He's just lighter. He's 202. But yeah, I agree.
Lighter than who?
Lighter than I'm
AJ,
sorry. He's
heavier.
heavier than AJ.
Heavier. He's similar to C.J. Henderson and Trevon Diggs from Bama. That's another one that he's kind of anywhere from like 4 to 6 on the boards that I'm looking at. But to me, again, A.J. Terrell probably I'm looking at maybe a second round
He'll
number
go
on
into.
that. Bryce Hall.
He could go in
Bryce
the
Hall's
first.
probably going to be he could, but I think with the injury concerns and the fact
Right.
that people can't work him out, might slide him
Right.
down and make him.
I mean, if he had
a real
played this
opportunity.
year or even the majority of the year, I think he could have been and just did what he did the year prior. He would have been a surefire first rounder. But he was hurt and hurt most of the year, so that hurts him.
Yep.
All right, let's move on. The last guy, we have John Simpson, guard, Clemson. John, 6'4", 321, big body guy, wide. Great run blocker, great at clearing holes. And in terms of pass blocking, not the quickest guy, but he's got a great anchor. Okay, like he knows how to set and really take on. As a guard, you're pretty much taking on a lot of guys that are bull rushing because it's a big body D tackle, nose tackle, or even covering the A gaps on blitzes, or he's good at picking up twists if a D end is coming around. Again, he's not the fastest guy, not the quickest of foot. But he does play for us, and we've done pretty good with our O-linemen as well, and, I mean, our offense in general.
Yep.
And so that speaks great things. He is a great character guy. He's played, I think, this his fourth or fifth? I mean, he's played every year. So he's not somebody that's just a one-year wonder. He's now we rotate our linemen in so that the young guys start to get work. Again, Simpson is great in the run block at opening holes. Look what he's done for ETN and for Wayne Gallman before him, okay? And he's good in pass block in terms of being an anchor. And for a guard, that's fine. You don't necessarily need to be the most fleet of foot if you've got a tackle next to you that is a little better at, moving around when need be. You just need to kind of, set and press. And he's strong like that. He's like a squatter,
He's probably, I mean, if I had to guess, I'd say he's maybe a fourth rounder, fifth rounder right now.
He may go in the late second, early third.
Well, I will say this: what I've seen, and again, not to slip off of this, but what's interesting to me is the offensive tackle seems to be much deeper than the interior lineman. And some of the names you're hearing on the interior line, the ones that are getting repeated to me is Cushenberry out of LSU.
Yep.
Cesar Ruiz out of Michigan is another big name out there, and then Jonah Jackson out of Ohio State, and there is some level of consensus. Again, these are not NFL teams' consensus because no NFL team's telling you what their draft board looks like. But these are coming out of some of the bigger talking heads, seeing that as an area. But again, it's the stuff that you can pick up later. But he's a quality guy, again, on another strength of a team that continually wins. So I think he is definitely a solid player.
Yep. And he's been scooting up some draft boards. But like I said, he's probably a fourth rounder. I could see him going, late, back half of the third, though.
Could.
Just again, a lot of it depends on needs and runs in the draft. So that'll cover the top 5 2020 NFL draft prospects in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Again, Isaiah Simmons, Mekhi Becton, T. Higgins, A.J. Terrell, and John Simpson. All those but Becton are from Clemson, Becton being from Louisville. We are going to cut it here, and then we'll get to the bottom 5 in the ACC.